So we started, Chris started us out on this path of the 8 elements, the 8 ingredients for cooking our lives. And last week we did right action. Tonight, right livelihood with an expansion into right living. And just maybe a very basic definition of this right livelihood, right living is the work that we take up and our relationship to it. The work that we take up in our lives, whatever that is, and our relationship to that work. And I want to start with story time. I want to start with a little story here, and then we're going to close with a story also. And so inviting us to use the imagination. And the story is of Dogen, who's the founder of our lineage. And 12th century Japan, he endeavors to cross perilous seas, making a journey to China. At that time, would have been very dangerous. I'm going to reference Bernie Glassman's book, Instructions to the Cook, in a minute here. And Bernie says there were pirates and typhoons, so he would have been navigating through those stormy seas, dangerous times. But he wanted to understand the teachings. He wanted to seek out the old masters. And so he took up this journey to go across the sea into China. And he arrives there safely. And then, as I understand it, his ship is at the docks for some time, maybe some paperwork or something once he's there in China. And he sees an older monk coming on by and invites him into conversation. He wants to learn from this older monk. He's like, tell me about the ways. And it turns out that this monk was the cook of his temple. And Dogen says something like, you're an older man, you're a senior practitioner. Why are you the cook? And how far have you come? And apparently he had come something like 12 miles that day to find some special ingredients for spring festival that was happening. So he's going to have to turn around and go straight back. And Dogen's like, no, just stay and let's talk. And the Tenzo says, no, I have this commitment to my Sangha and to preparing this food. And the words are something like, what good is that? Why are you doing that? Dogen says. He's like, what good is all this labor that you're doing? Surely you could be meditating and studying instead. And the monk says something like, my friend from a foreign land, you don't know our way. You haven't learned yet. Really sets him straight. This sense of separating his life into these different compartments and this hierarchical thinking of what is practice and what is valuable. And of course, Dogen comes home and takes this practice up, and he writes the instructions to the cook and gives us a beautiful way for cooking our lives, for living completely in each moment, not separating out the time in the Zendo or the time that we think we're being really mindful with the rest of our life. And I want to give a little bit of Bernie's telling because I think it's very beautifully expressed very beautifully. So he's talking about Zen. He's talking about right living. It's not just the pure or spiritual part of life. It's the whole thing. It's the flowers, mountains, rivers, streams, and the inner city and homeless children on 42nd Street. It's the empty sky and the cloudy sky and the smoggy sky too. It's the pigeon flying in the empty sky, the pigeon shitting in the empty sky, and walking through the pigeon droppings on the sidewalk. It's the rose growing in the garden, the cut rose shining in the vase in the living room, the garbage where we throw away the rose, and the compost where we throw away the garbage. Zen is our life, our life. It's coming to the realization that all things are nothing but expressions of myself, and myself is nothing but the full expression of all things. It's a life without limits. He says there's many different metaphors for such a life, but the one that I have found the most useful, the most meaningful comes from the kitchen. Zen masters call a life that is lived fully and completely, with nothing held back, the supreme meal. And a person who lives such a life, a person who knows how to plan, cook, appreciate, serve, and offer the supreme meal of life, is called a Zen cook. So I want to say a little bit about how this has lived and expressed itself in my own life. And it feels important to create real relationship in our one Sangha body through this kind of intimacy, like real telling. I don't want to just read to you. I want to share a little bit about how it is for me. And I hope to hear a little bit about how it is for you today and other times where we get a chance to sit together. I'll say this, about 18 years ago, I did have a very strong religious calling to take priest vows and to live residentially. And actually, longer than that, I did my undergraduate degree in religious studies in the late 1980s and early 90s. And people said things to me at that time, oh, do you want to be a nun? You know, people were very not supportive. And I resisted that of no, I guess not. But really I did. It was just that I didn't know what that was yet. I didn't know this lineage. I didn't know this path yet. When I did find my way back, and I say back because my parents had been at Tassajara, but then divorced right after they were pregnant with me. And while I was a baby, they divorced. And so I lost contact with this lineage. So when I found my way back 30 some years later, it was as a parent, and mostly as a single parent. So that path wasn't open to me when I said, I think I want to ordain. I was told you need to launch your daughter first. And I still have some feelings about that. And what I did do was take up this whole life of caring for my child as my practice. I wanted to bring the monastery home in every possible way. And my daughter will be 21 this summer. Is that possible? What does it say on the Han? Like quickly passing? Don't waste time. Don't waste time. So now I feel what's happened, much to my surprise, is I feel very protective of lay practice because it's what I've been doing for this long, is trying to somehow figure out how to bring my monk karma together with my mom parent karma and to live those together. So there's a sense here for me of claiming this lay person path with all of my strength and helping others do that too. I mentioned a minute ago, yeah, Elle and I will be at Green Gulch offering family practice. It's the first retreat I've done there. And I think the first retreat for families they've had there, at least in the last 17-ish years since I've been involved with the program. So this feels like one more way lay practice, family practice gets to come forward that I didn't really expect, but how phenomenal. Now I'm getting to support other families to do just what I got to do, which was live at home with my daughter and take up practice as a lay person. And I'll say a little bit, maybe I'll say a little bit about this today. Something else that happened during those 21 years was that I started to do this type of work in schools to bring little small mindfulness programs into other community spaces. And I formed a little nonprofit, which actually is called Joyful Mind Project. And the joyful mind, the name in there, is one of the 3 minds that Dogen invites us to cultivate in the instructions to the cook. And I'll say something about those 3 minds, the other 2, in a minute, well, in a little bit. So let's look to the Cheryl Wolfer book here for some support. Yeah, and before I do that, I think I also want to say, I hope I'm not painting too glossy or rosy of a picture, because that wasn't just all joy to do that work and to be a mom and to stay home. Um, that's hard work. That means falling down and forgetting my vows and forgetting my integrity and losing myself in the moment and losing my temper and coming back again and again and again. I don't want to make things too shiny. I want to be real when I talk about what it is to be a human being. Yeah. Okay. 95, page 95, if you have this book. This is Misha Shengren Merrill on Right Livelihood, Work as Spiritual Practice. From the earliest days of my Buddhist practice, the Eightfold Path has been a touchstone of pragmatic wisdom for me. In particular, right livelihood, this is what we're talking about, right living, right livelihood, has always seemed to me to be of singular importance as a fundamental guide for anyone working in the modern world, but perhaps especially for someone like me, a layperson who wished to have a serious meditation practice, but who, due to pre-existing responsibilities and obligations, needed to work in the marketplace and live a householder's life. How could I do this practice in an integrated and harmonious way? And she goes on to say, she's talking here about this perceived gap between our religious training or our formal training and the rest of our lives. So she says to integrate both paths, however, is to understand the fundamental interconnectedness of our lives, where right view and right livelihood intersect. It is a manifestation of the Buddha's middle way, in which everything from meditation to the family bank account offers a seamless practice opportunity. Our real job, our life job, is to become awake to who we really are. When we remember this, we will be less likely to separate our work from our practice. I love this. Our real job, our life job, is to become awake to who we really are. I have a sense as I read that again here of this one Sangha body. I keep coming back to this language. This is who we really are. And then she says some sweet words in here about being at Tassajara and being introduced to work practice. Work practice was given the same weight as meditation and was expected to be done with the same level of care and thoughtfulness. Unlike my worldly experience, work wasn't being done for personal gain or benefit, and I was not rewarded in any special way for doing my work with attention. That was just how the work was to be done. Work, I found, was just the active side of meditation, a meaningful way of expressing interconnectedness in every activity, whether it was cleaning the altar or raking the courtyard. Not exactly the way it works in corporate America. Amen. Yeah, I'll say this, I had a chance to do a work period, a practice period with my daughter at Tassajara when she was maybe 10 or 11. And we actually were assigned the job of discerning between the native grasses and the invasive grasses, one blade at a time. If ever there was a Zen job and it was hot, we're in the heat. This one, no, not that one. And we learned that if you tug and it comes out, that it's invasive. I don't know if that's always true, but in this case it was. So we were looking for the ones that wanted to stay put. And so beautiful to get to practice with her this way and with this work, this attention, this discernment that we were learning through that practice, to then let that inform our lives when we went back home. And it's much different than another retreat opportunity I had with her when she was a little younger than that. And we were on retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh. And in the morning, there was walking meditation, and the children would join. We all went out. And this was in Toronto, I think, in a long line behind Thai walking. And then she wasn't old enough to go into the Zendo or for me to leave her alone. And I remember just standing and watching people continue their walking right into the Zendo and being, that feeling of being left behind. I just was crying and they all were going and I had to stay to care for my child. It hadn't quite come clear in my mind yet, right? It was like a feeling of what they were doing was more valuable and I was being left out. Then look right here, this child that I'm with. But I also don't want to deny that grief. These are some of the things that are asked of us when we stay home. That grief is real too. So maybe holding both truths in this. This is also from the Wolfer book. Well, right livelihood is essentially about honorable work that is free from harmful consequences. Work itself has changed beyond even the Buddha's considerable imagination. So I wanted to name the frame, like the original frame of right livelihood, as I understand it, is that Buddha discouraged 5 types of business, 5 types of work. Was trading in weapons, dealing in human beings, slavery and prostitution, meat production, the sale of intoxicants, and the sale of poisons. And so I've been thinking, like, let's investigate that, like bringing it into today's world. Like, how does this look today? Trading in weapons. I can't help but think of our tax dollars, where those are going. Human beings that are exploited through unfair labor practices. Maybe factory farms. How big that's gotten now. And the sale of intoxicants and poisons, my mind just went to big corporations and the tech world. And even Chris invited us to look at right speech through our use of media consumption, like the sale of intoxicants. There's something there, I think, worth investigating how we're participating in some of those systems. It's complicated, where our tax dollars are going, if you're investing, where your investments are going, or even just what investment of your time you're giving. So many questions I have here about what this looks like today. I actually created an entire booklet. This is my neurodivergent self on labor exploitation. And I won't read through all of that tonight, but it does seem like something to consider, like what is happening in the world today, in the world of, maybe we would say, colonial capitalism. How are we existing with this practice of right livelihood and giving ourselves wholeheartedly to work, when so often our work is, our labor is extracted or exploited from us in unfair conditions through low wages or gig work, or the big things like systemic and institutionalized racism. And then the labor that folks are asked to do that they didn't really consent to or sign up for. The labor that Black and brown-bodied people are doing just to go out the door. Is it safe for me? Dealing with microaggressions and unfair practices and what seems like possibly, I don't know, a whole catastrophe happening in our country right now. The work of women, the emotional labor that many women do for their whole families, staying up late at night, planning the next dentist appointment, what's happening with this child's mental health, caring for the home in this way, the unpaid labor of laundry and chores that many people do. So it's a big question I have, is how do we bring right livelihood forward and this spirit of work practice forward within these systems that we exist in right now? Like, can we turn that energy and strength towards disrupting those systems? Like, can that be what we give wholehearted effort to? We say yes. Mm. Mm. I want to talk for a minute about a little bit of the work that my organization, Joyful Mind Project, did in schools. We're not doing these school programs anymore, but it seemed like well, it was quite a surprise to me to encounter how our good hearts can get us into trouble. And what I'm pointing to here is, so my org came into a dozen or so schools within the Bay Area and brought some large and some small mindfulness programs into these spaces. And what I saw again and again were good-hearted teachers who, because of their love, because they care so much about their students and about what they're doing, that then they are forced to exist within really unfair work environments. And I know some of you are teachers. The same is true for nurses and therapists, right? It's like our love ends up being sort of used against us because we care so much, we're willing to put in so many hours. And then the use of the mindfulness I was bringing into schools was often a device to ask teachers and students to then be able to tolerate those unjust conditions. Just learn how to calm yourself, but we're going to have you still working 60 hours a week. Or I saw somewhere some time ago that at Amazon, they put in little meditation booths for the factory workers to just go get calm before they got back out there for low wages. So I think, again, like put it into context. How are we bringing forward this right livelihood, our right living? And we need the rest of the Eightfold Path. And the next one coming up is right effort. So that we're cooking with the whole list of ingredients. Mm. Mm. I want to talk for a second about ableism. One of the ways that my organization came forward was because of my own time living with disability, where the causes and conditions of my life did not support my mind, body, and I wasn't able to participate in the workforce. So here's one more way where we get to investigate what we've internalized under the systems, within the systems we live in. Here I may be pointing to a puritanical work ethic where your ability to produce really equals your value as a human being. Many of us internalize this message. And then what is it to come into a period of time where you're not able to be in the workforce? There's deep pools of ableism that we're steeping in this country. So I have a profound interest in disability justice, and maybe we'll talk more about that another time. But it is how that nonprofit came to be formed. And I want to talk here about Joyful Mind and the other two minds that Dogen gave us. It was on that retreat where we were discerning the grasses at Tassajara, where that name first came into my awareness. I went on that retreat hoping to think of a name for my little organization that was doing these small, one at a time mindfulness programs. And on the first day, we walked into the dining hall, and there was a sign in the wall, hand painted, pointing to the Low John slogans. And it's number 21. It said, "Always maintain a joyful mind." And I thought, this is something here. What is this? And then finding it again in the instructions to the cook and the Tenzo Kyoken. So the first mind is a joyful mind. Always cultivate a joyful mind. And the way we do that is through gratitude. It's through realizing we could have been born in any conditions. And what are the conditions I have right here? And can I utilize those? Can I take them up as the ingredients to really live a full life? The gratitude that arises then nurtures the joyful mind. And the second mind is parental mind or grandparent mind. Can I bring that unconditional, protective love and care to the whole world? Can I cultivate that mind that can be here? And the third is great mind or big mind, mind like the sky, a spacious mind where all of this moves through clouds, forming and unforming. And we can rest a little bit in the big mind, in the big space. And the word rest there before I close this out here with my little ending story, I want to give a nod to the work of Tricia Hersey. If you don't know her book, Rest is Resistance. Rest is Resistance, and her organization, the NAP Ministry, like resting. This feels like a good thing to take up as practice also wholeheartedly, is like valuing our lives, our rest, our bodies, so that we can be in the world the way we want to be in the world. Not just falling on our sword or producing all the time, but rest is resistance too. So we started with Dogen's journey to China, and I want to bring us back home now. And so I just learned this story. Maybe some of you already know it, but apparently, as Dogen was making that perilous journey with typhoons and pirates and coming back from Japan to China, the storms were very bad, and everyone on board was afraid they might die, that they weren't going to make it. And I can only imagine being on a ship with no technology. There's no calling through, whatever we have now. They're just out there in the middle of the sea. And apparently Dogen was, he was so afraid that he started just chanting the Lotus Sutra, I believe. And that through the chanting and this calling out to Kanzeon, she appeared. She appeared in a little boat and helped guide them back. And as I understand it, there were many people on the ship that all agreed to seeing this image of Kanzeon that appeared out of the sky, out of the blue water, and guided them back home. This is what I'm asking us to do in our ritual today in lieu of service, is to call on Kanzeon to guide us back home through the storms that we are, I think, all sailing in right now with our political climate and with the actual climate, these poly crises, I'm hearing it named, that we're in right now. Can we call on Kanzeon? Can we get in that ship with her? Or maybe we already are. Mm-hmm. So before we do that, we'll have some time to, what's the word, deconstruct this, to get into pairs, dyads, or breakout rooms, and to just reflect a little bit on what's arising for you now. Maybe a question would be, how can we cook the supreme meal? How could right livelihood or right living support this collective body? Or anything else, whatever's coming up for you tonight. Okay. Yeah. And here you can self-organize into twos. And Constance, do you want to give us a time?
Yeah, so about 12 minutes.
Okay, so 5 and 5. Okay, 5 and 5. Thanks, everybody.